Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Health in Your Hands, another episode. I'm Dr. David Ajibade with the Brain and Body Foundation. We're not going to waste any time today because there's a lot to cover, and that has to do with Black people. Remember, the topic is why Black people die first. This is not to scare you, this is not to depress you. The fact of the matter is that there are certain things that we are, quote unquote, weak in or deficient in. And the sooner we learn about this, the more we'll be apt to take the right actions and right steps to prevent things happening to us further down the line. This is especially important for our kids. We're going to be certainly, if we learn these things now and start to inculcate them into our kids, they're going to enjoy a much healthier, longer life. And in case you haven't realized this, Nigeria, of the 54 nations in Africa, Nigeria is the bottom two is at the bottom two in terms of longevity. It's a big problem. Why should the Lion of Africa, at one time the most the most populous Black nation in the world, but at one time had the greatest revenue in the whole of Africa. I think we were struggling with South Africa at a point in time. But nevertheless, we're supposed to be quite rich. We should not be having such a poor result when it comes to lifespan. So a lot needs to be taken care of. So please pay attention, share this information with your folks and loved ones, and so on and so forth. Today on the show, we have no other than Dr. Susan Edionwe again. Hi, Doc.
Hello. Thank you for having me yet again. It's my pleasure to be back.
Absolutely. Thanks for making the time. So Dr. Edionwe is an ENT surgeon and a lifestyle medicine specialist, and she is super thrilled and excited about educating Black people, especially from those from her motherland, Nigeria. Yes?
Absolutely. Very much so.
We appreciate this. And there was one time I was watching you and you were talking about anemia. And that caught my attention because I had never heard that before. You said that you had anemia and that Black people tend to have less anemia, by the way, folks, means lower amounts of red blood cells, and that Black people tend to have it across the board. So can we talk about that? I know we're going to talk about cancer very soon, but let's talk about that anemia factor as well first.
Yeah, it's something that, again, the full science or the genetics behind it, we're not 100% sure about. But we do know that Black people tend to have more iron deficiency anemia than other populations. Now, there are other forms of anemia, and there is yet another form of anemia that Black people also tend to have. And we know a little bit more about the genetics behind that, and that's sickle cell anemia. So anemia in and of itself, because like I said, there's different kinds. There's more than iron deficiency. There's more than sickle cell anemia. Anemias are when there are problems with your red blood cells. And your red blood cells are very important transporters in your body, in your blood. They transport oxygen, they transport nutrients. So this is really the life force of what keeps our bodies going. And when you have an anemia, you either don't have the right number of red blood cells or you don't have the right size. So if a red blood cell is too small, then it's not able to transport all of the oxygen and nutrients it needs to transport. Red blood cells are typically circular in shape, but in sickle cell anemia, they're deformed. So in that instance, you don't have the right surface area. Again, you don't have the right space to transport the kinds of things you need to transport in the blood. And furthermore, with sickle cell anemia, the shape of those red blood cells actually becomes very problematic. Think of little tiny daggers going through your blood vessels, and that can lead to all kinds of pain crises, and even injuries. So yes, anemia is something that in Black, not just Black American, but also Black African, Western African, we know that there is this genetic predisposition for. By and large, I think I remember something like 50% of Black people in this country have some form of iron deficiency anemia, which in Nigeria, I'm sure that number is equal, if not more. Iron deficiency anemia is something we can do something about. It's simply just doing something about it. By taking and being sure you are getting the right sources of iron, you can cure an iron deficiency anemia. Myself, everybody in my family, let's start there. My siblings have iron deficiency anemia. I have it too. And I recently had my levels checked and my levels were normal. Why? Because understanding my genetics, understanding my health, I realized that I needed to be very persistent and consistent with taking iron supplements, which I've taken now for a very long time. And I've taken my numbers from poor to normal. So I don't have to worry about anemia at this time. And it's something very simple.
I think that's a very important point. And it's important people need to test, because at the same time, you don't want to overload the system with iron. But here's another good tip. We know about vitamin C, and quite frankly, between you and me, Dr. Susan, I think the recommended amount for vitamin C is absolutely ridiculous. But that's another thought for another day. But vitamin C helps with iron absorption in the gut. So if you're most of us are vitamin C, really, let's be quite frank, folks. Most of us are vitamin C deficient. When I've started prescribing vitamin C for people, it has been amazing how their health has improved. Now is the powder that I prefer, because the powder you can put in water, you can drink over time. The problem with taking a capsule or a pill is that the body just takes a little bit and gets rid of the rest. But if you take it in water and you drink over a period of time, it gives your body the chance to absorb the vitamin C and do the work it needs to do with it, including absorbing of iron, the right amounts of iron into your bloodstream. So that's really, really important. You had to want to say something about that, Doc?
No, you're absolutely right. There are, just depending on where you're at, there are forms which you can get them sort of in combination. Myself, I take vitamin C every day. People should remember vitamin C is water soluble. So you can take a good amount of it and your body will know how to manage it and pee it out. Now, I wouldn't recommend just drinking the whole bottle of vitamin C, but you can be consistent with it. And it's again, very simple. A lot of the things that we've talked about, vitamin D, vitamin C, iron. I mean, think of these are things that are pretty available to many of us. And simply taking these on a consistent basis can reverse some really big diseases.
And it's interesting that the poorest countries in the world, vis-a-vis African countries, are the ones with the greatest amount of sunlight. So at least if you can't get your vitamin D supplements, try to spend a little bit more time.
Go outside. Exercise outside, right? So don't be sedentary. You do your exercise outdoors and you're killing two birds with one stone.
Absolutely. Well said. Perfect combination. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Susan Idionwe. Remember, the Brain and Body Foundation is open. We've been told we're not saying it enough. You can call and go to a clinic. If you have a kid with brain disorder or a kid with sickle cell disease, we will help. Don't lose this opportunity, because we're running out of supplements anyway, so we will help. Just contact us. Speaking of sickle cell disease, Dr. Idionwe, you had something you wanted to say about that.
Yeah, going back to the fact that, a lot sort of unites African Americans and Africans when it comes to our genetics and the kinds of disease that we have. There's a very interesting study that looked at the genetics of African Americans, being that African Americans, because of the historical context of slavery, African Americans do have some European genetics, some of them, 20 to 30%. So this study looked at sickle cell anemia in African Americans, and then it compared that to sort of the sickle cell trait and sickle cell in European DNA, and then in Western African DNA and genetics. And what they found is that African Americans who have sickle cell anemia in this country, their genetic makeup is more similar to West African genetic makeup, particularly the Yoruba genetics, Bantu and Mandeka in Western Africa, those populations, but particularly that genetic this genetic population of people who are in Africa, America, their genetics mirrors more so West African genetics rather than European genetics. So it shows us again that we are quite in fact linked. And it's so interesting that genetically we're similar, but then environmentally, we are more similar than we are different.
That is interesting. That is interesting. Not surprising though, because West Africa is the birthplace of sickle cell disease, and sickle cell disease is primarily a Black condition. And of course, the most number of Black people in the world are in, yes, indeed, Nigeria. We carry the prize. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, we have to talk about cancer now. So cancer amongst Blacks, big problem. Many people don't really realize it. Lung cancer is the top cause of cancer death in the world. Blacks have a huge percentage of that. Prostate cancer, Black men. Breast cancer, Black women. Colon cancer, worse in Blacks. What is going on? Doc? Susan?
Well, sort of, it's a bit of the same thing. There is some genetics there, especially with, for example, lung cancer. Studies show that taken in the United States, while Black American men tend to have higher incidence of lung cancer, they are not necessarily more prone to smoking than white people. Right. So it goes to show, and we talk about smoking being a huge risk factor for lung cancer, but yet here we have a group of people that don't smoke more than another group of people, in fact, smoke less. Right. They're the ones that tend to have a higher incidence of lung cancer. When you talk about cancers, yes, genetics, I believe, plays a larger factor versus like when we talked about diabetes, where genetics was more of a minor factor because that's more of a lifestyle disease. When you look at cancers, yes, environment definitely plays a role, but I think genetics is key here. Same thing when you talk about breast cancer. What do we know about breast cancer in Black women? Black women tend to have more mutations in what are known as breast cancer genes. There's two kinds, breast cancer 1 and breast cancer 2 gene. Black women tend to have more mutations that can lead to breast cancer versus non-Black women. And then on top of that, when Black women have breast cancer, they unfortunately get the absolute worst kind, the kind that is most aggressive, which is called triple negative breast cancer. And that boils down to genetics, unfortunately. So for this arena, especially when it comes to cancers, genetics, unfortunately, is something we can't escape.
Okay, so I hear that, but I also hear the fact that, you being a lifestyle medicine doctor too, can appreciate this more than the typical the average oncologist, because there's gotta be something that one can do. Yes, there's the tyranny of the genes, but it doesn't mean that no matter what you do, it's going to happen that way. Except of course, if you're born with an XY as opposed to an XS, no matter what you do, you're going to be an XY. That would be argued in the United States that yes, you can still do something about that. But in general, you can do something about your genes, whether they are expressed, whether the bad ones are expressed or not. So some of the things that I hear about, and please feel free to correct or jump in, is that for women, you want to ensure that you try to keep a healthy weight. You want to check your family tree, because many times you can find out if your mother or your grandmother had breast cancer, and then you can find out and then do something about it. And of course, you want to build your immune system. You want to make sure that if you're not taking all the right foods, if you, for any reason, you can't keep a healthy diet, you should keep a healthy diet, but at the same time, you've got to ensure that your immune system is strengthened. I personally have been all over the country in the worst hotspots, COVID-19 hotspots. But I know that I'm at risk, and so I'm ensuring that I'm taking high doses of everything to ensure, and this is still safe, I know what I'm doing, but to ensure that the immune system is strengthened. What else can we do to ensure that, well, you can't ensure, but at least let's do our part to hopefully keep healthy and not be a statistic, because these statistics are absolutely ridiculous and alarming. You're
absolutely right about that. And it all boils down to being vigilant. The last show we talked about health literacy, and that's really people understanding what things impact their health. In order to do all you can to prevent these diseases, you have to be aware of your health, be aware of your health history and your family's history, because we've already done a good job showing that some diseases traffic in our genes. And that definitely, applies even more so when we talk about our immediate family. If you have a family member that has cancer or multiple family members that have cancer, that means you have to be more vigilant. If you live in an area where cancer is more prevalent, because sometimes we've seen that certain environmental factors have caused cancer to sprout in different communities, you have to be more vigilant. You have to look at yourself and be honest and say, well, what are my risk factors? Is my diet a bad risk factor? Is my lack of exercise a bad risk factor? Is the fact that I have vices such as smoking and alcohol use risk factors? And then when you've identified what risks are pertinent to you, it's really up to you to say, you know what, that's not acceptable to have these risk factors in my life, and I want to change them. And that's one of the things in lifestyle medicine that we talk about. This idea of lifestyle medicine is that you, the patient, you, the person, are in the driver's seat. We're here to help you along, but it really starts with your own willingness to make these lifestyle changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And being in the US where you have access to the healthcare facilities, it just makes sense for men to do their prostate exams, for women to do their mammograms, and other methods of catching this early, feel their breast and palpate, and maybe on a monthly basis. Isn't that what is recommended these days? A monthly,
that is
like a birthday kind of thing.
Yes, right. That is. It is definitely recommended. Even simpler than that. It's funny, we were talking about this. I actually did a recent show talking about the different health screenings that are recommended based on age. And starting in your 20s, regardless if you are, have children or not, for women, it's recommended that every month you do a self-breast exam. And for men, beginning in your 20s, it's recommended that every month you do a self-testicular exam. So there are things you can do, whether you have access to a hospital or not, that you can still try and practice some prevention, especially if you're being vigilant.
Absolutely. And then back again to vitamin D. I know we're talking about cardiovascular disease in the last episode, but what I read somewhere is that Blacks tend to have these inflammatory changes, these lesions in the blood vessels at a much earlier age than whites do. So that in the early 20s, late teens, they already begin to show signs of inflammation, earlier and more severe than those now in the white people. So again, this underscores the importance of diet, lifestyle changes, and also taking the things that protect. I can't overemphasize that. You got to take things that will help to protect against certain conditions. I'm not, I believe more in, prevention is important, but I like to use the term building strength to strengthen your key systems, strengthen the immune system, strengthen the brain, strengthen the endocrine system. And there are certain nutrients that are specifically suited for those things. And people need to know about them.
Yeah.
They need to know how to use them effectively for that purpose so that they don't become statistics.
And I'd like to add to that, when you start talking about doing these things that strengthen your immune system and strengthen your health, many people need to understand that these things have to be done on a chronic basis. Oh, yeah. You can't say, I'm going to take iron for the next 10 days and that should solve my problem. Even when it comes to iron anemia, it's recommended that you take iron for at least 9 months before things really change. So these things are commitments. They really require your buy-in and your persistence to before you can see some of these things really materialize in your life. There are simple things you can do, and compared to what, one of the things that we see stateside is the United States has the most expensive healthcare in the world. That does not equate to the best. What that equates to is the fact that we have so much disease and it has put so much burden on the cost of healthcare. It's made our healthcare expensive. That's why stateside, we're now starting to push, hey guys, we really have to take prevention and, as you say, building up our immune system and building up our health seriously so we can prevent so much burden on our healthcare system.
Well said. One of my favorite questions that people ask me is, well, how long should I take vitamin D for? And I'm like, well, as long as you intend to be a bit black, then you can continue to take vitamin D. If you intend to be white, then maybe you can stop. But that's a problem. I mean, people don't understand that this is not something that just goes away. Like you take your antibiotics for 5 days and it's all over. This is a problem that is here to stay. So you got to stick with it. I mean, even if you don't like taking pills, you got, for some things, you got to switch your thinking, switch your brain, and just put your, in gear and say, this is for the rest of my life. I'm going to be living this kind of life. I'm going to be adding these things because my body needs it. And without it, I mean, we've got all kind of, there's a picture on the internet. I don't know if you've seen it, where they showed through two mice. One was genetically manipulated, so they couldn't manufacture vitamin D, and the other one was normal. And after about 6 months, they showed the two of them. And the one that couldn't manufacture vitamin D was shriveled and old and without hair. The other one who could was healthy. And that to me was a striking, and very telling of what can happen if you don't. Vitamin D is not just a vitamin; it's something that helps your cells work. It's a key part of your cellular machinery, without which your body simply won't work like it should. I mean, we still make vitamin D to some level, but it's not to the extent to which we need to make it. So it's super, super critical. And thinking about I was going to talk about the teeth, the dentition that we mentioned last week too. A lot of studies are now showing that poor dental hygiene, if you have inflammation in your gum and your teeth, is going to translate to problems that can affect your cardiovascular system, can affect your brain, can even lead to cancer. They found that out because of the bacteria. Once you don't have healthy hygiene, if your teeth aren't healthy, there are bad bacteria that tend to grow more, and then they tend to get into the bloodstream and cause trouble. So you want to brush your teeth twice a day, morning and night, and also floss your teeth as much as you possibly can. I know flossing is not that much of a pastime in Nigeria, but flossing, you got to floss your teeth, because the floss gets in between the teeth, and about 40% of your teeth surface is in between the teeth. So your toothbrush is not going to get there. So you got to floss that. So these are all things that in the Western world, especially white people, tend to take for granted. We Black people don't do as much. And I think we start to get educated and get caught up with the right health practices, so that we can at least not start blaming the system all the time. We have our part to play.
Yep. I will say to that, one of the things that I often find is whenever there are new trends in preventative health, or new trends in, improving your immune system and things like that, I often tend to find that it is white people and Asian people that tend to flock to try and figuring these things out, and are early adopters of new treatments, new preventative treatments and lifestyle modifications. And I would really, just as you said, encourage Black Americans and Africans. We know the studies have shown the benefit of really adopting these things that we're talking about. So we don't want our people to be left behind. We want to, lengthen the life of Nigerians in, both at home and abroad. And it really starts by vigilance, persistence, and improving your health education, your health literacy, understanding why these things.
Well, I don't know what else to add to that. That is perfectly said. So, Doc, thank you again, Susan, for making the time to do this. I hope we can count on you to come back and educate your people in Nigeria. Can we always catch on?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, absolutely.
Absolutely. I will say from the last show, I had some people reach out to me on Instagram, and I, want to extend a big appreciation to those who reached out. I always like the feedback, and whenever anything we do helps, I think it makes us both feel good. So, yes, absolutely. I will definitely try to make myself available so we can continue to have these discussions.
Awesome. Thank you again. So, folks, thanks for joining us. Remember, you can watch these videos. They're all archived on the NTA website and also on our website, brainandbodyfoundation.org. Take care, stay safe, God bless.